Or will not only stay new, she'll improve as newly developed equipment is added. The 18-cylinder Wasps are among the biggest piston engines now being made. The carburetor alone is larger than some automobile engines. Taken apart down to the last bolt and pin, each part will go to its appropriate sub-department to be tested, then refinished or replaced. The parts have been grouped in baskets to ride the overhead conveyor for the 5-hour trip through the cleaning bank. Our 2,100 horsepower stretch out on a line 60 feet long. The 3-4 is being stripped to her bare fuselage, and every part, subject to the slightest wear, is checked by inspectors. New slotted flaps, about the size of barn doors, permit shorter takeoffs and slower landing speeds. The landing gear, like all of 6534's critical equipment, has duplicate operating mechanisms, one electric and one hydraulic, each entirely independent of the other. The extraordinary delicacy and precision of a top instrument craftsman can make a watchmaker feel heavy-handed. The gyroscope brain of this automatic pilot spins at 18,000 revolutions per minute, with parts so small that they're adjusted through a microscope. Yet the giant propellers are also so finely balanced that they can be set in motion by the weight of a single paper match. An automatic pitch control mechanism shifts gears from climbing to cruising in flight. Upon landing, the blades can be fully reversed so that they push against the air, stopping the airplane smoothly and swiftly. Visual and micrometer inspections are supplemented by World of Tomorrow devices which uncover any hidden flaws. In orderly ranks, the new and renewed parts are conveyed to the final assembly line. And once again, they begin to assume the form and function of a giant double Wasp engine, seen here in progressive stages of reassembly. Its 18 cylinders, equipped with water injection and jet thrust exhaust, deliver a maximum of 2,400 horsepower. When the pilot guns 4 of these great power plants for takeoff, the 9,600 horses under his hand drive the DC-6 through the atmosphere with more power than is provided by any locomotive now riding the rails. After being run for 5 hours in the test cell, under conditions far more rigorous than anything ever encountered in actual flight, the engines are returned to the dock. And now the overhaul draws to a close. The hundreds of written orders have been worked, checked, and signed off. The final inspectors have swarmed the plane with flashlight and checklists and found everything in order. And on the 5th day, 6534 backs out of the dock feeling like a new airplane, which she is. But there's still another 2 days of careful scrutiny on the ramp by inspectors who check on the inspectors before she's ready for flight testing. During the next 4 hours, the test flight crew will check and recheck the special factors which give 6534 her great dependability. Those reserves of range, altitude, speed, and power. For range, her tanks can swallow the whole 4,200-gallon load of this huge gasoline tank truck, giving her the ability to reach a landing place hundreds of miles beyond any scheduled destination. For altitude, 6534 climbs far above any mountaintop in the entire United States to cruise the smooth upper air, far above ordinary weather disturbances. Her pressurized cabin keeps the inside atmosphere at an easy-breathing 7,500 feet, while the air outside is a thin 19,000. For speed, the 4 big engines will cruise the DC-6 at better than 300 miles per hour. For power, the DC-6 requires hardly more than half of its horsepower to achieve this fine performance, which means that she can not only fly with 3 engines, but she can keep on climbing. And she can maintain her altitude comfortably with any 2. 6534 ordinarily cruises at only 55% of her rated power, leaving a comfortable reserve which can be used to maintain normal schedules against adverse wind conditions. Six, 5, 3, 4, okay for flight. Take her away. And 6534 goes back on the line, back and forth over United's 13,250 miles of scheduled route. Clouds are hanging low over the Los Angeles airport this winter morning, and the rain which drizzles off 6534's silver shoulders is only a sample of the weather which lies far to the east. Today, 6534 scheduled for Flight 608, the Hollywood, eastbound to New York, with 1 stop at Chicago. The crew checked in an hour and a half before flight time. Posted on the weatherboard, the captain finds a broad assortment of detailed data, including reports of wind conditions at various altitudes, flight logs from pilots who've just flown in over the route. The meteorologists get new information minute by minute. Today's ground weather is unfavorable from Denver east, but as usual, upper air is clear and smooth at the 19,000-foot cruising level. The co-pilot computes his gasoline load to carry the plane beyond Chicago to an alternate airport if need be, plus an ample reserve. Departure time comes closer as the airport limousines bring their passengers from the hotels and terminals. And as the passengers check in for their flights, it becomes obvious that just about everybody travels by air these days. Captain well remembers that a very few years ago, under similar weather conditions, this flight would not have left the ground.
That's true. Today, lying across the north central plains is a low-pressure area, characterized by rough air and strong winds blowing in a counter-clockwise direction. Not long ago, unfavorable weather along a single basic route might have canceled the flight. But nowadays, we have many available routes, all radio-controlled airways, and we can choose the one where the weather is best. So today, we'll fly our regular course as far as the Grand Canyon and then swing south via Amarillo, Texas, and let those circling winds give us a tailwind boost, which will offset the extra mileage. Tomorrow, the storm center will have moved southward. We'll fly a northerly course. The next day, we'll be back on our regular route. Pilots call this pressure pattern flying, but it simply means that the longest way round is frequently the quickest way home, also the smoothest and the sunniest.
Well, it's time to be getting down to the airplane. Out on the wet ramp, 6534 is drinking her breakfast as the flight engineer, third man of the crew, concludes his nose-to-tail check of her equipment. Overhead in the cockpit, the captain and co-pilots begin the checking and cross-checking, which will go on more or less constantly until they land at Chicago. Although every instrument and control and dial is second nature to these men, each is called off and checked whenever the airplane prepares to leave the ground. The ramp agent has collected 49 gate passes. 6534 is traveling pretty full today. The stewardesses will have plenty to keep them busy. And somehow it never fails that for every Mrs. Bennett embarking on her first flight, there's a Mr. Bennett relishing the chance to show off his vast experience.
Los Angeles ground control from United 608, ready to taxi. IFR to Chicago.
United 608 cleared the runway 25L.
United 608, ready for takeoff.
United 608 cleared for takeoff. Climb westbound on the west leg of the LA low frequency range to on top. Report on top.
Roger, 608.
Clear for takeoff. 4 synchronized throttles, jamming 9,600 horses into action, and a schedule to hit. Sunshine 3 miles up. Chicago, 2,000 miles and 6.5 hours to the east. When 6534 climbs into the cloud cover a few hundred feet above the field, Mrs. Bennett would feel much better if she knew that the plane is riding a radio track more sharply marked than a highway route. But her uncertainty is momentary, because these big airplanes are usually only 15 minutes from sunshine. Aircraft headed east fly at the odd 1,000-foot altitude, leaving the even levels cleared for planes flying west. So when the captain levels off at 19,000 feet, 6534 is far above any mountaintop in the United States and clear of airplanes flying in the opposite direction. Passing Hoover Dam and Lake Mead, the co-pilot radios his position and gets in return the latest weather and wind data. Goes back to the cabins of the PA loudspeakers.
Your attention, please. This is your captain speaking. Through windows on the left side, you'll soon be looking down into the Grand Canyon of the Colorado. Directly below us, the dark green triangle is the south rim of the canyon. Now you can see the highway to El Tovar Hotel and Bright Angel Lodge. Radio reports indicate that we should continue to have only scattered clouds until we're over the divide, so there'll still be quite a lot to see. Thank you.
But 1,000 miles to the east, the clouds are solid, not scattered. Chicago Dispatch expects to bring 6534 in as scheduled. But the airlines believe in anticipating every possibility. And so the Chicago Dispatcher refers Flight 608 and payload control at Denver. These offices control the movements of every airplane United's mainliner fleet, as well as loads they carry 24 hours of every day. So, out over one of the most extensive private telephone and teletype systems in the world, go payload's request for data on the individual passengers aboard 6534. To Los Angeles reservations. Which passengers want connections at Chicago? To Chicago reservations. Which passengers want connections on United for Washington, Philadelphia, Detroit, Boston? To Milwaukee, Cleveland, and Detroit airports. Can you take care of 608 if we divert it to you from Chicago? Soon the communications net brings back the data on Flight 608. Every passenger is now known by name, and every individual's problem will enter into the final decision. Payload and dispatch work up their plan for the flight. If Chicago ceiling drops below the 300-foot minimum, they'll set 608 down at Milwaukee for refueling en route to New York. Prearranged transportation will bring her Chicago passengers to downtown Chicago. These alternate routings are planned as a matter of routine procedure. Few of them are used, as evidenced by the fact that United's entire fleet operates almost 100% of its schedule. It's mealtime now, and 6534 is cruising eastward over the Continental Divide. Those four thundering engines barely audible through the blankets of fiberglass which soundproof the two big cabins. Over the prairie states now, riding the beam up toward the Great Lakes. Mr. Bennett goes over the speech he's giving tonight, while Mrs. B settles back for an after-dinner nap. Beyond the wheat belt, across the Mississippi, and as 6534 approaches Chicago, the dispatcher radios that the airport is now open.
Your attention, please. Go in through the overcast on a routine instrument approach. The already use the landing system illustrated in the booklet in your flight packet. You'll notice that two radio beams are projected from the airport runway. The glide path is like an electronic highway, slanting downward at the correct angle to bring us out at the exact of the runway. The nickel beam, called the locus, is the white line in the center of that highway. In front of me here in the cockpit is a simple instrument which tells the whole story. The vertical needle warns when the nose strays even a few feet to right or left of the localizer beam. The horizontal needle does the same thing if we get above or below the glide path. To make the perfect approach, it's only necessary to keep the needle centered. Our mileposts are special radio beacons which cause signal lights to flash in the cockpit as we pass over them and mark our distance to the touchdown point. Although we'll be in the overcast during most of our approach run, our radio aids will tell us exactly where we are at all times. We'll touch down on the Chicago runway in 8 minutes. Thank you.
Every experienced air traveler well remembers when this kind of an overcast would have meant endless circling over the terminal airport, while the overworked tower talked down the stacked airplanes at 15-minute intervals. But this afternoon, planes will touch down in perfect safety, no more than 3 minutes apart, with the casual ease and sureness of clear weather. The same kind of clouds which concerned Mrs. Bennett a few hours ago have lost their significance. Now she understands how the pilots know exactly where they are at all times.
United 608 calling approach control over Aurora at 5500. Over.
Roger. United 608 cleared to ILS outer marker. No delay expected.
5 miles from the field, the captain lines up with ILS. And the pointers settle down to a steady fix. Wings flat to the glide path, nose straight on the localizer. 6534 is angled for the exact end way, as surely as though she were flung down through an invisible tube. The X-ray eye of the precision beam radar sweeps the skies, pinpointing the position of every airplane in the area within a few feet. The radar man monitors all ILS approaches and could talk any of them down if need be. Landing gear down. Now crossing the outer marker.
United 608 over the outer marker at 07.
Roger, United 608. You are now cleared to the Chicago Tower. ILS approach.
United 608 leaving outer marker inbound.
Although outside vision is obscured, the captain can see perfectly with the aid of his precision instrument.
Airspeed 135. 130, 125,
There's the inner marker.
125, 125, 125.
And there's 6534 breaking out of the overcast, lined up for a perfect landing. As the wheels touch down on the snow-covered runway, the pilots pull back the throttle, reversing the pitch of the propeller. The engines keep running forward, but the propeller blades change from pull to push, helping to bring the airplane to a smooth, swift stop. Chicago, after 2,000 miles of sunshine over some of the worst ground weather of the year, and on the midway ramp within 5 minutes of schedule. New York-bound passengers will have time to stretch their legs, make a phone call, or send a wire. But despite the nasty wind underfoot, the well-coordinated ground crews will have 6534 refueled and stocked with hot meals, mechanically checked from nose to tail, mail and luggage and cargo handled and stowed, and the airplane and her people back in the air within 30 minutes. With a fresh crew aboard, 6534 is ready for an on-time departure. Chalk up that one to the teamwork of a crack ground crew. Destination, New York. 6534 climbs through the overcast, from snow to sunshine, in 11 minutes by the clock. Mrs. Bennett and her fellow passengers will be in New York on time. Once those words would have been a boast. Now they're just a routine statement of fact. For today and every day, at air travel's peak hour in the late afternoon, more than 500 airliners are aloft at once over the United States, carrying some 600 tons of cargo and 15,000 passengers, swiftly, safely, and dependably, in a thundering tribute to the Airlines of America, big and small, whose crisscrossing routes are weaving a bright new tapestry of service to the present and promise to the future. Close up your magazine, freshen your lipstick, stow those papers in your briefcase, straighten your tie. We're approaching the airport.
Chicago to New York, now arriving at Gate 3.
To close another page in the logbook of United 6534.